Hey, what's up? I just want to come in for another live. This is I just want to reach right on over, give myself a pat on the back for making 800 videos. 'Cause if I don't give a pat on my back, why not get a pat on the back like that? But I just reached 800 videos on the channel, and I just want to say thanks to anyone who's paid this channel any mind, even just to see like it is raised. What's up with that? What's up with that fit or something like that? Anyone that's peeped the channel at all, I just want to say thank you because that's like the motivation. Like even if I get a handful of viewers on any video, that at least lets me know that like the some of my content is landing. And like I read in a book somewhere that's like you can make fun of you can make fun of almost anything about a person. Like some people has come on the channel, and like I think someone was they were giving me I looked back at the feed like so if you're a content creator, like there's a little bit of like controls about like understanding like the audience, like the metrics for demographics, but I don't access any of them as to be because it feel like sketchy looking into who would watch the channel. But the only thing I've looked into is like sometimes when I exactly turn on the my page like to upload something, I'll land on like the first page of the demographics, and it'll show like the age, gender, and like a little bit of the location. And I don't look into it, but it appears, so I peep it. It's interesting. And then I'll go back, and I didn't do it for a long time. I had like several lives, and I wasn't engaging the chat while I did the live because I didn't want to get distracted on it, but I also was new to the platform. But then I look back in the videos, and I can watch it back, and it'll show like the chat in real time, and it's like for interesting form of feedback because it showed me like how people would respond to a particular point, like how a point would land. And for me, that's tractable, and that's learnable because it gives me like a temperature for an audience. And one thing for an author of any kind is that I think it might be true with artists too, but especially like authors like whether prose is like when you talk just straight talk. Like right now, I'm talking prose. I'm not really being very much of any like comical. That like I think humor is like that's like a form of poetry. Is like in literature, but like humor, poetic, tragic, hyperbolic, exaggerating, or rhetoric, like convincing, argumentative, making appeals, like different things. I'm not doing a lot of that. I'm just talking straight. That's like prose. But for an author, part of the voice of an author is actually imagining. It's actually similar with singing. I've done a video on here referencing a book I'm reading right now by I think his name is Richard Alderson about about the singing voice. It's an older book about singing, and as a singer, you never quite exactly have an exact read gauge, except for when you're it's kind of like so when you're it's almost like similar like playing basketball sport. When you're playing a sport, you practice a lot, you do a lot of practice, you know what your body feels like, you know. Hi, I'm new, Wes Murphy. What's up, Wes? How you doing, Wes? Thanks for tapping in. I'm just gonna keep running my mouth, but I want to say what's up. Thanks for tapping in and say hi, I'm new. What's up? I was here saying that this is my 800 video that I made, and I wanted to say thank you for anyone paying any mind anyhow. And I'm getting ready to talk about how the engagement and the traction is part of like having your voice and forging your voice. But I was saying is like if you play like a sport, like when you play a sport, you know your skills, you know yourself, but you're playing against a new team, a new court on a new day. So that's not exactly clicking. You're not exactly here now. You're something in your head, you're something in the crowd, you're something on the court. But sometimes you get popping, you get hot like that, you get on fire, and then you actually do know what you look like. You do know you really have a sense of how you look, how you feel, how you are, how you see. It's all together like that. But it's similar for a musician where even if you're playing a guitar, when you play a guitar, you know how it sounds to you, but you're also familiar with those licks and those lines, so you don't actually know how it lands. Because like if you think about a song you really love, like a classic song, it sounds as good anytime you hear it, and it's almost like the first time, but it's still not exactly the first time. The first time you heard something, it hit different. So even if you're rendering something you don't know exactly how it hits. It's the same with singing. When you sing, your voice is differently to you from your perspective because the sound that you make is going through like your different sinuses and cavities in like the flesh of your own like torso, throat, face, sinuses, stuff like that, and actually even skull. So it's gonna come across different to you than other people. Like I remember when I was young, my mom would do like a lot of these different like these camcorder videos like of my brother when he was born and stuff like that. And like I knew myself, I was like a rambunctious person, like outgoing. I think trying to think of the word for that when you're like outgoing and like there's a word for like when you're very like expressive and outgoing. But not extroverted, but there's another word like I don't know if it's ebullient or like there's some word like maybe someone can help me with that. Someone say God bless you too. Um, uh, and actually, so you talking to God bless you. I didn't know I had the Holy Bible right there because I got some different stuff with me, and I was taking a couple different things, so I had it on the top because I was gonna actually that's a different topic, but sometimes it's good to read the Holy Bible for any reason. Like right now, I'm in a lot of venues where I'm sharing close quarters with a lot of people of different backgrounds. A lot of different backgrounds have been through it, are yet going through it now, and about to go through it. But if you read the scripture from a religious standpoint, or even, or Cole brother here said that it also helps with your character. It can actually dial in your comportment and your demeanor, and it can affect you on a lot of levels. Just to lay eyes on the scripture like that, not even to be promoting religion like that. But someone said God bless, and I actually have the Holy Bible right here. But this is not a religious message in itself, channel in itself, or content in itself. But I'm not also shying away from that as it would be topical or teachable. But this is more just so for this channel. I began this channel. The first iteration was discovery songwriting, and I did a lot of music uploads. I'm still working on music upload. Like I got my guitar. I'm about to do some chops with it, practice, but it never stopped being about self-expression. And I think that to be a great artist of any kind, whatever you do, and also to be a healed person. A lot of times we talk about trauma a lot. A lot of people talk a lot about trauma and like post-traumatic stress. I've read a book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb that said there is such a thing that's understood as post-traumatic growth, and it's viable and possible. But whether through post-traumatic stress and or growth, what it would amount to, what it would look like to be a healed person, a whole person, would be to express yourself. As when something inspires you, when you have a thought about something, a feeling about something, that you would have this seasoning, experience, maturity, but also inspiration and freedom and creativity to express yourself and land that, and therefore be understood as you. Because like sometimes when you meet people, it's like you're telling your background, you're dropping off your back. I got some bad with me right now because I'm living that, I'm getting out how I live. But you want to show what's all in your back because you want to be. It's like and this and that, and then when I was this and that, and we were in Kentucky and this and that. But you really just want to be understood. You just want to be seen, and you want to see and be seen. A lot of people, we just want to see and be seen for who we are, and we want to experience other people as who they are, but also while being experienced as who we are. And I think that's what a lot of what it is to be healing, because healing is almost like healing isn't a state in itself. Like healing is like a byproduct and a lifelong. Healing shall never cease, because healing is part of growth, and also destruction is part of life, and healing attends destruction and life, and life attends destruction and healing, and destruction entails healing and life, such that we'll never stop being hurt, hurting people, heaven forbid, and needing to grow and heal. But I think what it amount to, it's not a discussion I don't think is heard a lot online or in like the popular lexicon or like conversation that is the nation. I'm saying conversation doesn't rule the nation. Conversation is the nation. What it amounts to is like to be able to express yourself and or be reserved, as it would be congruent with you, so that you can be experienced and understood and to respected as exactly who and what you are, would be like health. And like, according to Osho, when you're in health, you're not aware of yourself. You're not aware of having health when you're in health, such as that you're not aware of having a headache. You're not aware of having a head, by and large, until you have the sensation of having a headache. Such too, you're not also exactly aware of fun or health when you're experiencing it, but what amounts to is like being yourself. Fun makes you feel like yourself, because that's exactly how you are. Like, oh yeah, that different person had that happen to them. Oh man, it's like if you think about like some of like the little less than like the little things that you enjoy online that are like you're not exactly proud of, like just even like some content like watching bloopers, like real actual bloopers, and you kind of enjoy that. You enjoy it because it's like that. Yeah, that's actually really you. That's what makes you feel like you. Like you enjoy being you. So I'm saying that might be like what health is like. And someone said, "What's up? What's up? What's up, my naga?" So you didn't know I had been to Nagasaki, Wakasaki, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Kawasaki, Naowaka, my naga, what up, my naga? Someone say what up, naga? Um, so what I was saying is that we a lot of times like as a writer, you don't know actually how your voice hits with other people because you don't know what someone else's experience are. So any word that I would say, like someone said that what up, my naga? Some people might tap on here and they would know what I'm talking about with Naga or not, depending where they're from. Is he really the Naga? They say the H Naga in chart. So you might be able to, if I were to, that's kind of a lot of things. Some things are inside joke, but also just to talk is a little bit of an inside thing where it's like you have to share a little bit of a background and reciprocity, and you also have to have faith and step out on an olive branch to communicate yourself because you don't know what other people's experience are, or even what word a person would know or how they would know that word. So I'm saying is that with this channel is that the feedback on the channel is very helpful just to have a voice, and an author has a voice, and actually just to have a voice. It's kind of like a lot of people can't stand anybody that talks, right? A lot of people can't stand someone that would talk, but people tolerate people talking differently. I think part of that is because you actually have to be a little bit arrogant to talk. To talk, you have to be a little bit full of yourself, such as it's coming out. Like according to Arthur Avalon, there's at least three forms of speech. There's causal speech, there's subtle speech, and then there's gross speech. So if you feel a way about something, right, before you could ever say something out of your mouth, because a lot of you, if you think about how actually complex it is to enunciate yourself with your speech, right? The thought process, the vocabulary spontaneously on command, and then the different associations you make while talking, then also actually the maneuvers you make with your very face and your entire speech apparatus, it is actually deep. It's funny, like I'd be want to say right here, a lot of people on here, right? You check out my channel, right? What if I said you don't know how to talk yet? You don't know if you can't sing Boys to Men from the heart, or if so you listen to me, you watch this channel, right? You say, oh, here go this one running his mouth, right? Okay, fair enough. Running my mouth online, fair enough. But whoever, if someone, I'm not trying to take, I'm just teachable. If you watch this channel, right, and would or wouldn't appreciate anything I say, but you also like music in your life, right? You might like any kind of music, right? But I imagine everyone likes at least one song that's singing, right? Even as much as people give Drake a hard time, most people like one song with the vocal chops, right? If you like any song for any reason that has singing in it, if you can't sing that song from your heart on command, or as you would be inspired around anyone that means anything to you, even the people that you think about when you hear it, but if you can't sing the song that means something to you from the heart, belt it at any and anywhere, any time of day or night, you actually don't know how to talk yet, because that's a deeper part of talking. Singing is not different than talking. According to a music teacher's poster that I saw in her room, if you can talk, you can sing. But also, if you can sing, you can talk. So actually, a lot of people haven't actually developed their entire self-expression apparatus as even enunciating verbally goes, because singing is still actually verbal. So a lot of people, you talk, you sing, and so you can talk, shout, raise your voice, belt, cry, decry, different things like that. There's different ranges you can go with your voice and your expression, but all of it is it's actually like one spectrum. But singing is not actually different than talking, and a lot of people actually sing when they talk. Like I used to have I had some puppy love girlfriends in high school. I had some real girlfriends in high school, but I also had some puppy love girlfriends in high school. And like some girls, when they talk, like they sing a little bit, like a lot. It's kind of, this is what I want to talk a little bit too. Is that right now, if I'm at a library, I'll go up to a lot of if I have to talk to the staff, they'll talk to me one way, me, buddy. That's how they talk to me, like, hey, buddy. But if I'm around the corner, I'm in earshot, but I'm out of eye shot, another person will come, higher stature, lower stature, higher maturity, lesser maturity, higher social standing. Most people wouldn't be taller than me unless they were very tall, because I'm 6'4". But you'll see completely different. The way you present yourself is called your comportment. You'll see a completely different comportment and demeanor towards other people verbally, and it's also in the tone and in the cadence. The cadence is significant too, but the tone, like, oh hi, like I can't talk like a lady on command, but they'll actually be singing. That's actually singing like that. So people are, even talking is actually singing. Talking is singing. I might be original to say that or not online. talking is actually singing that whole time, because there's no actual full stop between what is singing and what is talking. But a lot of people don't practice singing, neither talking. Neither do they sound like they're singing when they're talking, or sound like but they more so sound like they're talking when they're singing, because they practice talking. But a lot of times we actually talk half-assed. If you think about it, if you're not actually practicing, if you're not reading books about communication, I could do better at that. If you're not reading books about communication and talking and working on getting better at talking, but also likely singing too, because it's all or nothing, baby, then actually you're half-assed talking that whole time. You can't stand people that talk, but also you're a little bit half-assed the way you talk, because it can be done better than you're currently doing it. And you can't pretend like it doesn't count for something to be able to speak well or talk well or even sing well, if you're honest, because I think we all would like to be heard, both talking and sometimes expressing ourselves in singing too. But you don't always have an entire gauge of how you come across, and that's why it's actually a little bit of an arrogance to express yourself, because you have, so according to Arthur Avalon, you have gross speech, which is expressed, subtle speech, which is before it becomes expressed, and then causal. But the actual, I think that your tongue is actually active whether you're being heard or not. Because if you look at, like, so some people say your mind is in your heart, like you think you have your heart. Sometimes if you get scared, you can almost feel like your mind is in your throat. Like, imagine you're in a barbershop and some people you have a problem with walk in the barbershop, or some people that are a little bit nervous. You're not trying to act nervous, you're not trying to be scared, but it just actually got you at full attention. You feel that in your throat right there in the barber chair. Or like sometimes, like, you get an idea about something, you smell something out. Some people say, don't leave, that guy got in trouble because he was thinking with this one or that one don't got the call of that one. Or like some people have a gut. But actually, did you ever think you might think with your tongue? Because like some things, according to in psychology, sometimes, like, even things that you would think are sturdy books, like if you I went to college, like I've been in college venues recently, but I was in college as long ago, and like including, like, the first time that I went away to college to live at college, that was about 2011, right? But I still have some. I'm actually carrying right now a book that I had with me at one of my first learning venues, and I didn't yet divulge it, even though I'm on hard times, because I don't want to throw away my education and my viability and my track record of education. And it has to do with like being handy and stuff like that. And if I ever get a chance to, like, my first intention at a school was to be like, there's a scene in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where he put his hands on the back of a lost dragon, a disciple, to heal her, and that scene spoke volumes to me. And I wanted to be I wanted to be a healer when I saw that, even though it was a film about martial arts, and I wanted to be having skills with my hands to heal people. And some people have told me that I have good touch before, but I kept one of my older books about that. But if I look at like some of these books from like 2011, as much living as I've done and experiencing life as I've done, also having come through those books and used some of those insights of those books in my life, and seen some of the strong and short suits, some actual college books are half-assed. If you think about it, if you look at like what they're talking about, they may say some real stuff, but it doesn't tell next to 1/10 of 1% of what it's really about. So like one of those was like in college, they had this thing where it said that psychology, so some people, like in some older like rap songs, they'll say like fix your face unless you want to catch a case. I think that was Juicy J might have said that. So fix your face unless you want to catch a case. And then like Project Pat also has some ones about like man, fix your face up before you come around somewhere. But a deeper thing is that you can affect your mind by affecting your face. Like when they say affect, that means like making your face into something. Like say an actor or thespian, if they would like part of, so to act, you have to. That's actually, because if you imagine like Hollywood, right? They say life imitates art, art imitates life. Why Hollywood is so crazy, according to Osho, because people get lost in their roles. But a deeper thing is that if you're an actor, I imagine you if you think like one thing, you make your face like one thing. But also, if you make your face like one thing, you also think like one thing. So to act, you really have to fall into something to act like that. And so it's a deeper thing, is we have to act a lot. According to my dad watched an interview by Marlon Brando. He was like the one of the god, like the I'm not sure what you call the I think Cosa Nostra of the mob families in the Godfather movies. But the actual actor Marlon Brando, who's a brilliant actor, he said that actually all people are actors in their life. At no point in your life are you not acting a little bit, and that's part of actually expressing yourself, is actually acting like that. Because you say this one, if you have a friend that's really animated or charismatic, it's like they're brilliant, they're magnetic, they're magnetic and brilliant because of their personality. And it's like some people may envy or rival or envy or covet a person with a magnetic personality. I grew up with people with highly magnetic personalities. And they according to Osho, you can either be polarized or attracted to someone like that, kind of like different poles of a magnet. It's going to either be south or north attraction or repulsion. There's no middle ground with a real magnetic person. But also, it's a little bit like a person that's really having a charismatic personality. You kind of love to hate them because you love them because they're themselves, and but they also have the gall to be themselves, and they're also a little bit putting on that whole time until it becomes real. That's the thing. When you're charismatic, you're putting on like that, but then you're actually winning people. You're having experiences with people. I'm saying winning like friends and like acquaintances and invitations and stuff like that, and even conflict and friction, because that also form you. You're having real experiences by being a little bit like over the top and acting out a little bit, but like in a charismatic, clever way. But then it become real for you acting like that, and then it becomes smoother to act like that for it being real like that. So it's like a feedback. But I'm saying is that that psychology book I read in college said that it goes from the face to the mind as soon. But I think it could also go from the mind to the face, from the face to the mind to the tongue, to the gut, to the heart, to the hip bones connected to the cojones. Da, da. So like we're like a buoyant like feedback like that, and you can't probably say which one starts or stops, but we can linger and hang out in the pocket of any different center of of attention for our mind. And so like, but you can actually think with your tongue, and I think that your tongue is actually always responding and reciprocal to your thoughts, whether you're being heard or not. Such as also like in that might be part of like sleep, talking in your sleep, is that actual mechanism. You at no point do real things turn off and off. A real spigot doesn't stop. A real Minnehaha waterfall doesn't stop. Minnehaha, a lot of places in Minnesota where I've lived a lot, they have the names that are reminiscent of like some of the different indigenous people here, and people and names of things. So like Minneapolis, Minnesota, those are like native indigenous names that etymologically, and then Appolis is not etymologically. That's actually like an appropriation to combine two different kind of like in the Southwest, you have like Tejano, Chicano language. That's an amalgamation of English and Spanish, and also part of different dialects within Spanish and English. Then where we're at in the North, you have that's an amalgamation, Minneapolis, because mini does. Some people would hear Minneapolis and they think it means like very small, like they might say like Minneapolis or Minneapolis, but Minne is more so. I don't actually know the true pronunciation as long as I've been here and been born around here, but I think it may be Minne, but Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnehaha. But Minnehaha, I think that's an actual true indigenous name. But Minnesota and Minneapolis, that might be an amalgamation and appropriation to combine the native for the first part of that word unit to the second, because Appolis, I think that means city in like some of the older etymology of English. But as much as I've been living here, I haven't so but when you sleep talk, when you talk in your sleep, it may be because you're connected that whole time to your actual speech apparatus and like things. So I'm saying Minnehaha, that's the name of a famous waterfall in near. It's actually on it's at the easternmost. So you have like maybe 5 or 6 different bridges at least between St. Paul and Minneapolis, which are twin cities. They have two down. St. Paul is the capital of Minnesota. It has its own downtown. Then no more than 4 or 5, maybe probably 5 to 8 miles away is downtown Minneapolis, and that's just across the river on the western flank of that river, St. Paul, on the eastern, and you have like different bridges across it. Like one of them actually famously crashed. It's funny. I've referenced on this channel that Minnesota is a case in point, canary in the coal mine for a lot of topical issues the country over. That the ones that are trending but not necessarily cool in itself. One of them was actually the bridge had failed in Minneapolis. I think it was the 94. You have a couple of different. You have like 94. Eastern, I think 94 goes all the way to San Diego, but 94 is the east and west flank crossing dicing of the Twin Cities metro area. Then 35 is the north and south as the interstates go, and then you have like a 494 and a 694 and a I-30. You have like a circle around the Twin Cities, so people don't have to come through the Twin Cities if they don't want to. It's like some sophisticated stuff like that. But then one of them bridges, I think it's a 94 bridge, it famously crumbled to the ground like randomly a few years back, like maybe like that, probably at least like about the time when I was like referencing like 2011, something like that. There's some bad tornadoes around that time famously, and then there was also that bridge crash. But that's actually a case in point. It was how actual sturdy is the infrastructure in America, including the freeways, no less, because the freeways are some of the actual unifying and most salient and impressive and meaningful infrastructure that we're aware of as civilians in the United States, is the very infrastructure. So not only do the infrastructure, but the main infrastructure, the freeway, no less, the interstate, come crumbling down in '94, a few years back. I'm not sure if that was a no, not '94. What was that? It might have been the 694. Damn, I'm gonna sound egregious. It's one of them Twin City bridges like that. But that's another thing. So like I'm saying, like we've had like different things about immigration happened here. Different famous police slayings have happened here. Different things to do with like corruption and politics. That thing about the infrastructure like that. There's been a lot of some different salient things come out of Minnesota that are like a little bit case in point. And sometimes I think it's because you have those twin cities like that, that it gives some of the ambivalence in the wiggle room in the gray area for things to germinate and manifest that are already lingering in the city and in the country. But one of those bridges, one of the main bridges between St. Paul and Minneapolis, on like the southern, probably the southernmost reach of the Twin Cities proper before you get into the suburbs, is the Ford Bridge near like the Highland Park area in St. Paul. And there's a mini waterfall there that's famous. But I'm just saying, the real waterfall never stop. It may slow down or cease, but it don't exactly stop. But the connectivity of our body don't stop, so such to our tongue doesn't actually stop running. So like even if you're quiet, if you're not talking, your tongue may actually be corresponding with your thoughts, according to Arthur Avalon, because we have gross, subtle, and causal speech, as we have gross, causal, and subtle manifestation that corresponds to spiritual being subtle, causal being cosmic, and then gross being like blatant, or like the most superficial of which would be like terrestrial on the earth. And according to the Eastern thought, is that for anything to transpire on earth at all, it has to be inspired and conceived in the spiritual sense first, and then that could happen, or that is happening or had happened. It corresponds with the position of the cosmos secondary, and that allows for the manifestation and appearance on earth terrestrial. And that'd be like similar to as above so below. But a lot of those principles, they exist on different ranges, like, and so the actual same principle paradigm will repeat. So another one is that according to Arthur Avalon, for any sphere of activity, including our local solar system, you have at least seven spheres of agency that is lords of something. So I think it's arbitrary what's actually a planet and what's not. But according to Arthur Avalon, you'll have exactly 7 regions of anything to rule and to balance anything. I think the Earth has 7 continents, if I'm not mistaken. There's 7 notes in the musical scale, not counting the accidentals. I think there might be 7. I want to say 7 has to do with rainbow. So 7 is very significant, and it's called a godly number. But a lot of people would know that. They would know that there's significance in the number 7 at all, and also to do with music, harmony, and light, which are not different if you appreciate it on the deepest sense. But then that too, actually, the solar system also would be part of that. Is that there's at least 7 likely lords or stations of control of the local solar system. And then probably it could be some people. I've talked to different people that sometimes you talk to people that use different substances, and they swear that there's like a nomenclature and an actual like reasoned out way that the different worlds exist, the different things you can experience in your mind. Like some people say, oh, that person's in the fractal world. I don't mean to make someone trip out with that, but you're saying like, oh, now you're in this other thing. And so like they say, like sometimes when people do not drugs, but like entheogens that come from like natural people, like that are like vetted by people's histories and ancestors. When people do things like say ayahuasca, according to Alex Jones, it's not only that you're tripping on the ayahuasca, but if you do it as a group, all of you are tripping on the same thing and seeing the same thing together, a collective trip like that. I've had such a thing happen where me and my brother got food poisoning from my mom the same night, and we were both throwing up the same night, and like taking turns throwing up, and that might be like a collective trip like that. But it go when they have a collective trip like that, it make you wonder, like, are there actually really other worlds that actually have some kind of organization, maybe some sophistication, but actually some salient recognizable features? Some people think that. Some people think that you have, like, so we are familiar with at least three dimensions. There's some things that are actually blatantly arbitrary about our three-dimensional experience, such as that as you're looking at this, it's different actually on a camera. As I go like this with my hand, it's appearing to you as, I think it might be, I'm not sure if anyone watching this, when I go like this in my hand, is this appearing in the right or left quadrant of the right or left hemisphere of your screen? As I go like this, does this look like it's like I'm shaking your left hand, or do you see the pixels on your screen on the right or left side? And so but if I were to shake someone's right hand, right, if I'm shaking a man or a woman's right hand, I actually shake across like that. Do you see that? I shake across to shake their right hand. So my right is their left. Their right is my left. But in the camera, I think my right is my right. But that's a deeper thing in that it's a matter of perspective. So a real artist is dealing in perspective, but life is a perspective. But that's a little bit arbitrary. How may my right be your left? How may that be? Because it's a matter of perspective. But I think that I was thinking to myself today is that I think that, and also according to Arthur, to Osho, life is actually singular. It's like unified, right? Like, I think if you were to study quantum deeply, you would see that there's a unity in life. It's a sophisticated unity, but it's actually unity. Because if you actually had true unity, the term unity would be redundant. Because perfect unity doesn't have meaning. Because it's an actual, I'm not sure what you would call that. It's like a negative oxymoron. Because were things perfectly unified, this sensation of being unified would be different. You wouldn't actually have sensation of being unified, because unity wouldn't have any meaning if there wasn't something to be unified from or unified as. There's actually, you need something, not that you actually almost need something without to give the sensation of unity meaning. But also life is like that, in that life is both homogeneous, that is like sameness, same, and then heterogeneous, that is different. And I think that that might be something of what soldiers experience. Like, I wanted to reference a little bit with this video, is that I was watching a documentary about the war in Iraq from it's a way back. It almost feels like watching a video about like the conflict in Southeast Asia, how long ago the early 2000s look like and feel like. Not necessarily feel like, but at least look like in those videos. Like, that's actually a different time already. That's going back in the day a little bit, because probably a lot of people that are not grown watching this, well on grown, been past high school, been past college, having family, stuff like that. A lot of them were barely yet or getting to be born around the time of some of those conflicts in Iraq. But for me, I was already of age by that time. I was already out of high school when that stuff, I was at the end of high school and out of high school when that stuff was popping off over there. But some of those, they were interviewed. Some of there's a video that just came out today online. It's a channel called something coffee, the coffee, I think it might be Coffee Films, something like that. And it's actually showing footage about the war in Iraq. Now, some of that footage is famous. Like, I'd watched different documentaries on the History Channel and Discovery Channel and embedded things over the last when I was young, around that time that stuff was going on, the second half of the first 10 years of the 2000s. So I had seen some of that footage. But this film that just proliferated today, I think it's called Coffee Films, the War in Iraq documentary. They actually showed a service member. They nearly barely showed him actually being executed, and then they showed his actual his remains as they were mocking his execution, the executioners in Iraq. And I wanted to say that that it was like, but then also they were also then, they, like, a lot of people, like, if you're my generation or maybe younger, you would have heard about the Battle of Fallujah, right? Most people that are familiar with, like, if you're familiar with the war, like, at that time, like, when I was a young man, I was entertaining and I was beginning to become conscripted when I was a young man. And I knew where Iraq was. I knew a little bit what Iraq was about, because there had been the first war in Iraq, that even as a child and as a regular average American citizen, you knew that there was baseball about the first war in Iraq, the Gulf War, that wasn't known about. My dad was a professor, and my dad told me that there were likely more so of atrocities and probably wicked ordinance and tactics that we wouldn't be knowing about as cilians, that would have been employed and even beta tested in that first Gulf War, probably all wars. So I knew that that first Gulf War was wickeder than it would be thought, but also I knew that we didn't know half the story or what the actual real grounds or pretenses were to be there as civilians, similar to like the conflict in Southeast Asia. But if you want to get the real scoop about anything, you have to get it from the street. The street know about what happened with anything, including those different conflicts. But it take a while to you get back to you on the street. But so this video just got back to the streets, no less, about the war in Iraq. But at that time, as a young man, I didn't know what Afghanistan was about. Like I had heard about it, but I didn't know actually what would be fighting about there and what meaning. I At that time when the stuff in Iraq was happening, I actually that back then that was before drones, like how we have drones now. But I didn't actually understand how you could have a gun with bombs and bullets reminiscent of World War II in the year 2003, 4, 5. I was like, damn, don't they gotta have crazy technology and like bombs and computers that would make like soldiers in boots and stuff like that be like a little bit redundant? That's exactly what I was thinking as a young man before like some of the stuff with like drones. But as we see now, it could still be done more because they did a lot more fighting there, and they're still doing it in Europe now with boots and stuff like that, even with the technology. But I think that that part of the military industrial complex is like making people like, I think that when people got geared up for World War II, it never actually stopped being World War II. We went into a wartime economy, but also our notions about life, civil society, production, the means of production, status, rank, and even fighting and warfare, it still actually got stuck on World War II, where like we still do things like that, and we still train to jump out of planes, and we still actually train like in masses and in companies and platoons and stuff like that in the modern day as though it's World War II. But if you watch that video about like about Iraq like that, they didn't know what they were doing as platoons sometimes, because like they showed like what some of that fighting. So what I'm saying is that we back in the day, we would have heard about average civilian, a man, you would have heard about the war in Iraq. You would have heard then later about Afghanistan. You would have then learned then later after after the fact sometimes about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, what they meant, what they're about, what the tactics were, what the atrocities were, and also like some of the a little bit of the famous of which is that some people would know, like you might know different areas of Afghanistan having not been part of the services that would have like that are reputed to have formidable fighting. But then in Iraq, you would not know a lot about that. Except only thing that I knew, uh, as a American civilian, is that Iraq had a lot to do with like booby trapping and like fighting within like close quarters of people's homes, and then also like it would have been different, a lot different terrain. I think I would guess as a civilian that Iraq would be more urban, and like Afghanistan would be more rural. But what I'm saying, the only reason I reference that is because we all heard about the Battle of Fallujah, that was some like wicked stuff, and there's some books about it, but never did you actually see what that looks like until today. There was a video that came out about the war in Iraq, and all I'm saying is that in that video they showed actually what that fighting looked like, and they showed it was like a room of men, like a room of men who were these men were like young men like that, like 10, 12 of them like that in a room laid out on the floor, and the men are like being a little bit kind of like callous and cavalier about recovering their fallen corpses, like to essentially, because they'd be tasked with burying them, because it would be, they say they're freeing, they were making those cities decent. They say that so that you couldn't have fallen people without, it wouldn't be clean like that. But all I'm saying is that there was like some videos in I think there was a what's his name? There's a man who made a lot of documentaries back then at that time, Bowling for Columbine, and I think Sicko, Rod Moore, I think his name was Moore. And at that time of that stuff in Iraq, he did a video at that time about that stuff, and you saw a little bit of the banter among soldiers when recovering like the fallen opposition combatants, and they'd be like mocking, that is therefore desecrating their combatants, and I think that, so I knew that that stuff had happened, but that video actually showed, like it showed the actual scene of the actual fallen members, and may they rest in peace, because you could tell that they weren't rich, they weren't having a lot, they were fighting for something. That's a hell of a lot of bravery to stay together as people when you're fighting up against something as formidable and organized as the Western forces, to those men who felt like that. But all I'm saying is that they would be they showed the actual the leader of like one of those teams of people that ran in there and shot up I think that had been a mosque, no less, that had actually been a consecrated holy venue. And so that that probably would have actually been that's actually a crime. That's a war crime that transpired there, because I think it would be a war crime to take guns blazing into a holy mosque, even in an actual war theater. But they did that. But what I'm saying is that they also interviewed a boy there, a young man, and so they're getting the testimony of some of those soldiers, and they would be saying that they were talking about like some one of the soldiers there in that film, he had understood that he had at least shot at least 12 people while he was there, and he was at the end of his career in the military, and he's wanting to get out then in the early 2000s. And then it said that he had passed away a few years after that, like in late 2006, which was after I already would have been entertaining becoming conscripted, and he lost his life due to an opioid overdose to treat post-traumatic stress. But the only reason I reference all that, there's a couple more points I want to make to that as war goes and how it's not cool. But the reason I said that is because I think that what that says is that one is that they showed that the person that the Western service member that was nearly shown to be executed in that film that just proliferated today about the war in Iraq, you could tell that he was a lot of a boy. He was a very young man, so much as to be like a boy. And then his captors, those were like yet seasoned men of faith, real formidable men by then that had executed him like that. So that's actually according to Hillary Clinton, is that women and children suffer the most in war, but that too also in fighting. So like if you think about some of the discrepancy in the age of conscription, like in the United States, like from seven, so I've met people recently in my accommodations recently who have been in a military lifestyle since 17, no less. They actually signed up for I don't mean to tell their business, but since they're I'm not identifying anyone. They had signed up for an actual relationship with the military lasting at least a decade, signed up for that before they were yet done being 17. And it took, like, you can imagine, you get a permission slip to go to a theme park. They got a permission slip to go to fight like that, and they survived that. And they said that experience was like being incarcerated. It's like worse than being incarcerated to be conscripted. But but if you imagine how nubile and green you might be as a man or woman by 17, even if you're a strong 17, you play sports, you're not as comfortable in your own skin and as strong in your own mind and disposition and like, I think scientifically that'd be the prefrontal cortex, but you're not as developed and seasoned, no way, no how near as a young, barely out of high school or maybe still in high school while signing up as an actual seasoned man. So that's an example of how children actually suffer in war, and may they rest in peace. But the reason I reference that is that these different atrocities that happen like that, like even just seeing that mosque with at least 10 fallen men in there, the soldiers that did that, because you could see as they're talking about that, they're processing what they just did to these men because they're now dead. They trained for that. Their training was effective in overwhelming, surprising, baffling, horrifying, terrifying, and taking the life or ending the life unnaturally of those men. But now that they just did that, they were still, because at that time, because some people can be new to fighting, but also some countries and nations and generations are new to fighting. So I would imagine that iteration of soldiers that went over there to like Iraq, the wars in the middle, the conflicts in the Middle East in the early 2000s, the American military had not been in that kind of fighting, I don't think, for recently, since at least like the former Gulf War, which I don't think it had as much fighting like that as the latter wars in the conflicts in the Middle East of the 2000s. I don't think the Gulf War had the same way like that at least that was publicized. And then before that, you might have had like some stuff in Panama or Nicaragua, and then probably some stuff that's off the books that would not be known about. But as the actual general rank and file go, I don't think that fighting had been happening since like the Southeast Asia thing. So I don't mean to say thing derogatory like that, but I'm just I've pointed out in this channel before that it's curious that fighting between European people, such as the Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War I and II, are called wars, and then what's happened in Southeast Asia and the Middle East were called conflicts. But all I meant to say is that those men in that video, that man who's with his team, that they just got done overwhelming people, they likely would have been new to like that kind of fighting, like within a few months or years, and not as much of a seasoned army or generation as like armies that had been fighting for a few years or half a decade as they then would, and as is happening now in other places. But all I'm saying is that when he's processing that, he's talking about what they just did, right? He's talking about that. but he's actually there confronted with these actual people that are no longer with us now living because of what they just did. Within a few minutes now, they're no longer with us. He's processing that as much as he thinks he's comfortable with that and trained for that and maybe seen that before or not. It's actually incredible to him, the meaning of that, the gravity of that, what they just did, even though that's ostensibly their job, so to speak, as military people say that's their job. What I'm saying is that the deeper thing, and what I reference is that with the injury of that, and then so one of the people in that film, they're saying that they had at least understood themselves to have actually shot at least 12 people at the time of that they were being interviewed while they were in imminent engagement. Then it said a couple years later that they maybe filmed like in 2003, 4, or 5 at the latest, but then that person had lost their life by the end of 2006 to an overdose. And I think that some of what the overdose might have been would, or I'm not saying that person, but what that can be, some of that they would call it post-traumatic stress. That's a scientific designation, but on a deeper level or a simpler human level is that we are yet one another. According to Arthur Avalon, writing at the time of World War One, from India, is that these wars things that he was talking about World War One, as horrible as that also was, that he would be aware of, is that what we learn in war, what we do in war, and what we suffer in war, is that we are hurting ourselves in war. No sooner do you do push-ups, no sooner do you sharpen your wits, no sooner do you clean your barrels, no sooner do you get dispatched or dispatch another person, then you understand that you had been hurting yourself that whole time. So you look at some soldiers, like they're looking like tough in front of the camera. Now your brotherhood is brotherhood. You have to survive a situation. People have to do what they have to do to survive. I'm not casting aspersions or judgment, but I'm saying as fighting goes, as being formidable goes, are you formidable enough to intend for yourself what you intend for another person by means of your training, your conscious intention, your training? It may be that if you're training a soldier to kill, right? It may be impossible to train someone to kill without training them to kill themselves, because who are you killing if not yourself? So no sooner are you sitting they say that in the older iterations, like say World War One, it was difficult to get soldiers to go to actually fire upon vulnerable targets, because there's something as a human being is that it's not a natural thing. It's not part of the development, I don't think, of human beings as a species to kill one another as efficiently as a firearm does. You may have got come to blows, and people would have been getting killed by other humans, but not as efficiently, lethally, and intent as a firearm. Because some people would say like fighting with fists or fighting like with different implements can be very intimate and violent, but it's not quite as effective and therefore intentional as a firearm. A firearm means deadly. There's no halfway. There's no getting hurt by a firearm. If it had been effective, is over. But some of the scariness of like crime, like say you had crime going on, right? If someone just walk up to you and they steal off you in the face, they punch you in the face, that would hurt. That would be horrifying, but not necessarily as horrifying as if they had done property damage while seeking to access your living accommodation in a vulnerable hour of the night, because that shows intent like that. That's real, actual intent. That takes practice to have that much intent. You have to be thinking about something. You have to go from causal to cosmic to gross. So it's yet more dire, severe. So in a way, a firearm is like that too, in that it's actually intent. It's been wrought like that, and it's been aimed like that. But I'm saying is that no sooner are you trained to kill. So to go to war, to train for war, is to train to kill and be killed. But the be killed part may evade people, is that no sooner are you killing someone different, then you're also being killed like that, and you're suffering what we call a moral injury, according to Chris Hedges. But the deeper thing is that not only is it a moral injury, but it is yet an actual, like, at least an etheric. Etheric means like the ether that connects us, that we are. We're the fundamental thing that we may be prior to and within the elements that we know is ether, like that. So etherically, we are one another, and that's what a person would learn in a horrible in actual having to harm another person. And I think that, so just as my right is your left, according to there's a bishop that came to our church when I was young. He was over our church, but from abroad, and he said that when a man dances with a woman, also in partnership with a woman, but symbolically what's communicated with the dance is that a man holds a woman's left hand in his right hand, and her right hand in his left hand. That is, most people are not exactly, and I'm holding this phone with my left hand to just to show that I actually subconsciously, unconsciously, and subconsciously, and to lesser degree consciously, picked up my phone and exactly began to vlog with my left hand, because I've been practicing ever since, like, when I was entertaining the idea of being of choosing to the armed services. I was thinking of contemplating that, and thereby I started training my left hand. I didn't stop. But most people wouldn't be ambidextrous, so your left hand would be or would not be your strength. Your right hand would be or would not be your strength. That correspond to a woman. I think that our mind may also be like that, in that you're so one of your mind your body is polar. All of life is polar. All of life has to do with the changing of the seasons, the weather, but that too based on the polarity of the earth. Our viability as healthy living beings is part of the seasons, the weather patterns. Our migration is based on those, the animals movements, and then our viability, that's all very polar. So too is our body on a lot of levels. So too is the very heart, like systole versus diastole, that may be polar. Part of the way we digest things, that we take it in the mouth, so it goes in the mouth and out the wazoo. That might also be some degree of polarity, like a finer polarity, like how a snake would pull something through like that. There's a word for that entire track. It appears in the works of Arthur Avalon. I don't know if an actual medical person normally would be familiar with that entire range of what goes from your mouth to your out your wazoo like that. That entire track. Also, it has the large and small the large and small intestine, which is bifurcated and thereby duplex, and that you have two of it. That may actually have to do with some of the polarity of digestion. I extrapolate the fact that you'd have two digestive systems, large and small intestine. But then also we're polar a lot like that. But then too, our mind is polar like that. Like that, you have the left hemisphere corresponds with the right hand, the right hemisphere corresponds with the left hand, but also they're understood to correspond with different propensities. I think the left is more logical, ostensibly, and the right is more, maybe not artistic. A better word would be illogical. Then if it was one or the other, how is this one logical and this one's artistic? Those are complete. That doesn't. It have to correspond because the brains are very similar. They're mutual, maybe counterparts, but similar. One's not this logical thing over here and this artist thing over here. It may be logical and illogical. That's maybe linear and like beyond linear, not less than linear, but there may be linear and linear and linear and non-linear and similar at once. It might be different degrees of linear. Like with one mind would be like more so cause and effect. The other one might be more like inverse cause and effect, or with some latency and delay in cause and effect. That'd be like the distinction between the poles like that. But then you could some people you may also say masculine and feminine. And then too, some people have appreciated that we have a dominant eye and like a subdominant eye. I came across that insight before I reached that. I didn't go straight to college. I didn't matriculate straight. So I came to certain insights before I came across them in like sanctioned venues, in actual like published material. But it has been, I think it's been confirmed by researchers that ostensibly human beings have what can be appreciated as a dominant eye and like a subdominant eye, and they may see different things. So if you look at my eyes, does it almost look like this is my right side? Does it almost look like my right eye would be more like aiming at something? Like if I was gonna knock something down, right? Like with a water gun. Does the right eye look almost like it'd be like a little bit more aiming, and the left eye is like, damn, like what did I just do? Or like, damn, I should do that, or what are we about to do? Or like, oh shit, what, like it's almost like they're thinking about like different things at once like that, but it's like a different part of you. But it might also be like one might be more masculine and feminine. But that too, if you say the word man, hey, what's up, man? To a male, right? That appreciates themselves as male and appreciates being a male, and they interface romantically and socially and maybe reproductively like a male is ostensibly traditionally understood to be a male like that, right? What's up, man? What's up, man? Would that not, maybe he may not hear that in like the masculine side, is that, man, I don't have to fight a fool like that, call me man, his brother like that, whether we're cool or not, or he might have to be with me in a fight, my brother, this one, that one, right? So we grew up fighting our brothers, our man like that, right? A lot like that, right? That might actually register with the masculine part of your mind, because does it register when you say the word man? So like in Spanish, in different languages, you have some distinctions between the gender of words. So you'd have like, I think el dia. I think it's kind of interesting because dia sounds feminine, but dia also means day. But I think you also say el. That might be like an irregular. I think that might be irregular in Spanish. You have el dia, the day, but dia is actually a feminine termination on that ah. Then you have la noche. Noche, that's feminine. So the night is technically feminine. Feminine is more deadly. So the night is technically feminine by the etymology in Spanish, which may be also called Morse Latin, according to Tashrik Bey, and that it represents Latin as it has been handed down and experienced in Spain and beyond. But that too, in its recent iterations in the last five, at least 100 years, as being contacted by the Morse Latin. I extrapolate from the works of Tashrik Bey that appear on the channel House of Reawakening Minds on YouTube. But that language, it will distinguish masculine and feminine like that. Um, but then some English doesn't always. It's a man is a man, is it? But so like a book, is a book masculine or feminine? A book, the great book. For in the beginning, the word was God, and God was the word. So some people say, is God a man? Is God a woman? Is God both? Is God different? Is God neither? According to the whole. All right, cool, everyone. So what I was saying is that, so it said that so in English we don't always is distinguish masculine and feminine in words. I think we do in names. Like if you hear like Christina, sounds like a girl. Kristen, that's a girl because we were familiar with that. But Chris or Christopher, the is masculine. So we do it in the names, but not in the words. But if you say in the beginning, so is God a woman? Is God a man? Is God both? Is God none? Is God less? Is God more? Is God some? Is God all? God, according to the Holy Bible, God is the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. But then is the Word, our words that you say the Word as though it's one word. So what was actually the Word if there's one word? Is it the name of God, or is it the promise of God to His people? What's the Word then? I went to a church called the Living Word. What actually is the living word? Is it word? Is word itself? Is the word itself the living word? Or is it all of speech, which would be then the living words, Mr. Wordsworth? But then too, is the living word, which is also the living God, if God is the word, if the word is with God, is that then masculine, feminine, or both? But I just think that and when you hear word, the word, what's the word? What's the word? But man, that's just I can't stand, man. I just need to know what the word is. Does that hit masculine or feminine to you, Mr. or Mrs.? But then so I'm thinking that it might be that one word may hit different to different people, because that some people like someone's voice, some people are irked by somebody's voice, some people like this singer, that talk, that speaker, that book, that. So some people like different people's words differently. Could it be that the actual polarity of someone communicating themselves it factors on and it lands on the polarity of another person's mind differently, such that the word man, what's up man, what up man, according to I'm sorry, the word man, according to Arthur Avalon, is of a Sanskrit origin. It comes from, I think, Saktiman. I think, according to Arthur Avalon, Sanskrit, an older language than English. One of the oldest, one of the oldest languages that still exists is Sanskrit. And if you read about yoga or the works of Arthur Avalon, or maybe Tantra too, you come across and you become familiar with like a lot of Sanskrit words. Like another one would be Nirvana. So like the group, the grunge rock group led by Kurt Cobain. They and then also attended by Dave Grohl, who transcended that group at the passing of Kurt Cobain and founded another group called the Foo Fighters, which was also equally, not maybe I don't know if equally or not, but they were incredibly profound as another rock group, and they may still be around. Foo Fighters, and I know they did more with like analog music after digital was in sway. They exactly remained on the analog, like with their gear, and it might have to do with their sound. But that group Nirvana, and they had a cool drummer too. He's very tall stature. I said in this video that I don't often meet people as taller stature than I am. But that drummer from Nirvana, he would have been one such, and he was a cool guy too. But they were all cool guys, those three. But that name Nirvana, I think Dave Grohl may have came on. I don't know if Dave Grohl was with them at the founding. I don't think Dave Grohl was with them at the founding of that band. I think he was recruited or invited to try out as a drummer once they had established themselves. I think as Nirvana, but they may have been Nirvana before that. So at least probably likely Kurt Cobain and or the rhythm guitar player, I'm sorry, it was a tall stature, may have had to do with the naming of that. But that name Nirvana, I think that's appropriated from Sanskrit actually, because Nirvana, that has to do. So we live in something called samsara. That is the competing seething forces of life that amount to different degrees of poison, depending on your position and your standpoint, but also that make life viable, because life is actually a form of poison. That girl is poison. That's life is poison like that. You have to pick your poison like that, according to the thoughts of that school of thought that touches uh, yoga, India, Bharata, I think it's called, and then also the continent, I think it's called Bharata, India, and then also like all the way to China and like Tibet. And some of that, according to Arthur Avalon, there were some different culture, like the ideas about faith and what meditation means and what a spiritual life means. It means differently from India versus China, where in like Tibet, where like more of the Buddhism would be in sway. But it has to do not only the least of which, but partly to do with work ethic, because like when you get to a certain point, the world has less meaning. A worldly life that is the affairs of men, the business transactions and love interests and family of men and women and children, which are all mankind men. It's different when you're resigned to, or you're preoccupied with, or you're sincere about a spiritual undertaking, discipline, observance, path, that amounts to different degrees of vulnerability that you'd have, different strengths you'd have, but also different vulnerabilities you'd have in not participating or being interested in the actual regular rigmarole and racket, and then also being a little bit reserved from that, because if you were actually living a consecrated life, you may have contention even if you were to try to hold down a job, because you actually think entirely different. And in some of the older idiom in texts, that ideas that Arthur Avalon promulgates, like means promote and make available to the public, and renders, he states that they had clear understanding about some of the limitations about what a lifestyle can amount to and afford and entail, that juxtaposed with other lifestyles. So like a teacher was not to, some of the schools of thought, a teacher was not to reside far away from you, because the distance in traveling would have made it a lot of complications, and it may have defeated or confounded or made more precarious the actual undertaking of study from a teacher, which is to pursue knowledge is the actual most arduous thing a person can undertake, and that too dangerous, according to Arthur Avalon. If you appreciate how it makes you vulnerable in different ways, physically, maybe socially, emotionally, intellectually, mentally, and also in terms of your livelihood and resources and wherewithal, which means like livelihood and resources. But then too, it wouldn't be appropriate to combine different classes, like to have a master who is of like a business class, or having a house, a family, with somebody that has a renegade or like bohemian lifestyle, or just completely lifestyle. There could be some ambivalence there, but it may be that if you actually take up spirituality sincerely, you may be out feel awkward first, and then be outed from traditional venues of socializing and earning a livelihood, because you have to talk like people to get along with them, or at least think enough similar to talk around them and be tolerated around them in their presence and get on like that. So it may be a matter of compulsion and necessity for a spiritual person to have somewhat reclusive or a marginal or a set apart life. And the Holy Bible would say a lot of things like that. Like that's actually what the word holy means. Holy means set apart, holy, set apart. So actually a holy, consecrated or not, but just a sincerely holy lifestyle may tend to more and more of isolation and marginalization and exclusion and preclusion of different social activities and vogue and sway of the regular goings on of men, women, and children, which are that of mankind, such that it puts a sincere seeker in a vulnerable position, but they're also entitled to a little bit of reciprocity, because they've also done well for themselves and the community, likely, and their family if they had one. And then also they themselves, just to lay eyes on such a person and that mode of existence, and some of the graces and discipline and understanding and insight that would attend that, is an actual blessing to other people. So when people were to lay eyes on that or come across that, according to Arthur Avalon, if they were to withhold something that they would feel inspired or could or reasonably assist that person with, that's yet a sin to actually look down your nose at, or turn your back on an actual a sincere seeker that's seeking alms, or necessitated to seek alms. But in Tibet, they had that dynamic would have been maybe true, as it can't be avoidable in the mechanics of how you think and live and exist around people. But they had different ideas about what it means to be a work to have a work ethic and to work and support a livelihood while being spiritual and not. So that some of the Tibetism, I mean the Buddhism, according to Daisei Suzuki, it can be very pragmatic and thoroughgoing. An example of that is like one monk, a Tibetan monk, according to Daisei Suzuki, was asked, "You're living so righteous. What would you like to be if you could choose your next incarnation?" He said, "Let me be a working horse that tills the field for the farmers." That's just a cool thing, and he meant that like that. That's almost like reminiscent of haiku, and it's part of that aesthetic. Is that they had a thing about work, but it might have to do with how they would have different it would mean something different, the same kind of meditation, and like so some of those words like some words don't translate exactly into English, like dhyana or like yoga. Those some of those words like yoga, but then dhyana, which is that's a true, when you say meditation, you're referring to more so dhyana, because it's not exactly a doing. It's like you're allowing it to happen. It takes attention, which out it takes effort, but it doesn't directly take effort to do meditation. But when you're in that state of mind, it's different than a regular state of mind, and it's along the lines of what's called dhyana. But some of those words like that, they'd be interchangeable, and some of the lore allegory in the lore with those faiths, like in India, in Asia, in China, they'd be interchangeable and they'd be influencing one the other, but there'd be different local rigors and attitudes and mores around aesthetics, like especially like duty and work, which is maybe one of the fundamental mores or lack thereof in human life. Is like, what does this thing about duty mean? And you're this much of a grown man, but you also got to pay bills, and you also got to do something during the day and be occupied. So what does duty actually mean at any particular iteration of human existence, including now? But that nirvana thing, I think when I don't mean to say derogatory like that, but when people would hear that group Nirvana, they may think of like meditation in Buddhism, the word nirvana. But I think that it may have come first from India, and there would be like, I think there's a distinction. There's a such thing as nirvana and maha nirvana. Maha means great. I think I can't define nirvana. It mean different things to different people, but I know that it can have a negative value as much as it can have a positive. It can have a negative and or neutral and or positive value and characteristic, as much as it can have a negative and or neutral and or positive and or positive. So it can have a negative and or neutral and or positive and or negative and or positive meaning, value, nirvana. But then I think there's a difference between a personal individual nirvana and collective nirvana. Such too is another word like mukti is similar to that. Mukti means freedom. Hivan mukti. So in any iteration of an existence, a living being, insect, creature, mountain, person, lake, star, planet, maybe solar system, maybe something greater, maybe something much smaller than that. Those can all be different degrees of personhood, a person that is Hivan, including insects, including animals, including things that we can't conceive, like bacteria and fungus, as it can be appreciated to be an independent, an acting agent. There is none of independence, or independence is not viable, but there is interdependence. So some interdependent agent in this existence that is Hivan, Jivan, can be of any stature, any station, any degree, and any multitude. It has how numerous Jivan. But then Jivan Mukti would be both Mukti, freedom for Jivan in a single being, but also for all Jivans, which are also all Jivans. So a person hearing this, anyone, you are an iteration and can be described as Jivan. The most succinct way that you can describe anyone, anyhow, maybe even the greatest. How could you describe? So some of the greatest of people, like according to Arthur Avalon, you can't perceive something without characteristic because it doesn't betray itself, anything of itself, if it's completely congruent. So you can't perceive who and what is great in this life. Neither can you affix a true characteristic. Neither can you thereby recognize who and what is great, because you can't affix something that is limit something. An affix is a form of like a title. Prefix, affix, suffix, those are titles, and you can be bound and conscripted or blessed, which can also amount to further down the line being bound and conscripted and fettered by an actual title, even that of a suffix or prefix or affix at all. Anything you add onto a name is an affix, such that that who and what is great cannot be described or limited to if what can be who and what is great can be described It can thereby be limited, bound, invoked, provoked, revoked, invoked, avoided, uh, cherished, relished, according to the intentions and purposes of man, which are not in itself as sublime as Jivan, both as Jivan is its own sake, a person as their own sake, and collectively beyond that of a primate, but not the least of which also a primate. So the most succinct way that you could describe anyone and anything of any station, including who and what is great and small and least and in the center and in beyond and within and from before and yet to be beyond again and before again, would be Jivan as a person. But then you have freedom or liberation, which also I think that's along the lines of Mukti for one person, but then for all of one person, which is all persons, which is also one person, Jivan Mukti. But when you hear the group Nirvana say that, you may not have some of the distinction between. Is this referring to Nirvana of like the Buddhists and or the people of like the Bharata Dharma of India? And what does that mean to the different contention that they've had? Or is this a new thing, a new iteration, American iteration of it? Is actually Nirvana the group? Is Nirvana the name and or group? Is that an appropriation of Tibetan Buddhism or Buddhism from Far East like China, or like Dharma of India, Bharata Dharma, or is it its own unique, or is it that of is it influenced by? I think it's influenced by Leadbelly, the singer, because Kurt Cobain referenced Leadbelly, and I think he covered one of his songs at their Unplugged event. But you can tell the way he referenced Leadbelly and played that song that he was heavily influenced by Leadbelly. Would be one of the ones that had came before and done it before, as well, if not better, or as well, at least as Kurt Cobain, Leadbelly like that. But is this Nirvana? Is it homage to Eastern Chinese Buddhism and or Dharma of India, and or not, and or what does that mean, as those schools were also divergent and not always necessarily collaborating and conspiring? The two may be competing and conflicting. According to Arthur Avalon, there's an adage that for someone practicing of a faith in India, like Bharata Dharma, maybe self-culture, sadhana, the quest for knowledge, and that amounts to like being able to express and understand worship, is not appropriate to actually set foot in a temple, even including a Buddhist temple. When you're actually living a spiritual life and path, it's not even appropriate to set foot in a temple. But though you be chased by an elephant, according to Arthur Avalon, not to set foot. Some people from India, the teaching of I don't mean to be controversial or polarizing with this, but just teachable. According to the works of Arthur Avalon, studying different sages, ascetics, gurus, hermits, teachers in India, has said that there have been statements made in India, which also references and pays credence, homage to the idea of Nirvana and Mahanirvana. Arthur Avalon also has a book about Mahanirvana, the Great Liberation. So did Kurt Cobain and them people, did they appropriate China and Buddhism, or India and Bharata, and or Arthur Avalon himself, and the concept of India and Bharata handed down from Arthur Avalon himself in his book Mahanirvana, the Great Liberation, directly that actual title, and that too, how did they know anything about Nirvana in the West in the time, like say the late 80s and 90s, at that trajectory in American history, but also intellectual history and freedoms and the lack thereof before that, and some of the new liberties? Would they have been aware of Nirvana without the contribution of Arthur Avalon and what he promulgated, whether he was famous with those books or not, as being one of the first incipients at the inception of winning esteem and understanding of some of the teachings of India for both Western audiences and Eastern audiences in India? To say Mahanirvana, and then that too, Arthur Avalon says himself in some of his books that to some of those schools that he would be referencing and learning from, it says not to set foot in a Buddhist temple, though you be chased by an elephant. But then I know that according to him also, Buddhism has much to offer and also has been influenced by India. It maybe influenced India back. And it'd be interesting if someone appreciate that the Buddha himself had come from, or I don't mean some people would go by the scriptures for what the history of the Buddha is, and it take a theologian to know exactly where he's understood to emanate from, and the historical veracity of that based on the scriptures. I can't speak in those terms for Buddhism, but I know that it is a little bit interchangeable, and for a layman, it wouldn't be clear was the Buddha from India or China. Then a lot of his success, his influence has been in China. I know that. Was he originally from India and appreciated as a great Indian man in China, or a man from that's not bound to like the region of India, as understood by China, but was also influenced by India, Buddha? But I know that nirvana can occur in both the Buddhist and the Dharma of India. But also Arthur Avalon was intending to study Buddhism and some of the thought of China, but I don't think he got around to that. But he made reference to that interest that he had in some of his footnotes, but he didn't get a chance to. So it's not that he mocks or derides or does not respect or does not revere and think that Buddhism is also awesome and a path. Because he said that a real spiritual person is very Catholic, in meaning that there's a word for like when different forms of Christianity come together. I think it's called ecumenical. I'm not sure, but also Catholic means like very diverse, like in faith. So the Catholicity of a spiritual man, not necessarily Christian or not, but not that too also not Christian or not, is that a real religious person is tolerant of other people in their past, because there are different paths to do anywhere to get anyone. But life is beautiful, and it's also ours to experience and understand for ourselves, and that doesn't have to be overbearing on anyone else or limit or preclude another path, not the least of which Buddhism vis-a-vis like the thoughts of India, as they have probably fed and enlightened one the other a lot. But I'm saying that you can't appreciate that when you just hear Nirvana, the rock group. But then too, does Nirvana also mean an actual late stage capitalism, also materialism phase in America, which also influences the world, Western influences the world over, but emanating in the Pacific Northwest with that band, as their iteration would go? Is that actually a new form of spirituality? Is Nirvana, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Come As You Are, those songs like that, is that not actually a degree of spirituality in itself? And that a lot of people that would grow up, some people say they hear cold chills, they feel cold chills when they listen to that music. That's actually what happens in church when singing praise. That's a spiritual experience. If something makes you feel cold chills or makes you cry, that's actually a spiritual experience confirmed. To cry or have goosebumps or feel chills is actually a spiritual experience confirmed to you. You know what you felt. You know what you're thinking when you felt that, more or less, and what kind of frame of mind you are. Was that not also spiritual? So I'm not dismissing Kurt Cobain in the least. He's one of my favorite. He's actually my most influential. He's my most salient influence. And when I was reading about Arthur Avalon and seeking to understand and undergo mantra sadhana to achieve mantra siddhi, which I understood as singing song. And according to him, a person who has amounted to that, or is amounting to that, attaining that, holds all forms of joy in their palm as they're expressing themselves like that and developing themselves like that. You look at Kurt Cobain as my champion. And I was talking to someone recently is that one of the true veneration of a saint is to become like a saint. I'm not calling Kurt Cobain a saint or not a saint, but I'm just saying that he was an actual incredible person that had a lot of feeling. According to India, that's a man of bhava. I had a safety manager who would sing a lot. He would sing beautiful songs. He was like a grandfather. And I once told him that he makes me think of this word bhava, a man of bhava. But so does Kurt Cobain, a different iteration of that. So Kurt Cobain is my primary salient influence as a man and as an artist, par excellence in my mind and my heart. But that does beg the question, like, where did he come with that name Nirvana? What did he mean by that? I'm not saying he had to explain himself for that. I'm not saying that, because he's an artist, and artists take license. That's another thing. But so too, authors take license. To express yourself, you take license because you're assuming things, and you're also assuming that other people know things, and you're also rendering things according to your experience, which is yet assumption. So actually, you take license as an author and artist, and that's what I want to say with this channel and how I began this video. But Kirk, but you still don't explain. If you have the license to do it, that is, it sounds cool and people enjoy and rock with it, and more so you enjoy it, thereby people enjoy and rock with it. You don't have to explain nothing about that. But it's just interesting. Was he appropriating and or referencing and or paying homage or not? And is that also appropriate? Is that appropriating for him to not call out directly and pay homage directly how that name came about? I haven't gone through all their interviews, so he might have done that. But or was actual his iteration of nirvana actually nirvana for people in the West under materialism, as transcendent of materialism and of the public school system, where a lot of people would first hear that song, and would that make a lot of people think of like some of that, like that angst stuff like that. I bet you a lot of people, even the song Teen Spirit, does the title Teen Spirit and or not the least of which the vibes of that not remind you of experiences around or not too far beyond, about within before high school like that, and some of the where you get some of the thick, the most arbitrary of fettering and lack of freedom in Western society is that of school age children. If you're going to be honest, and that too, once they start to have heavier rigors in high school, and some of the fears of adulthood and the competing with the Joneses and the other students that will become more and more real and visceral in high school, was Nirvana, that group, and also some of those songs, was that not actually Nirvana for people steeped and fettered in capitalism, Western capitalism like that. But I got more content like this, but I'm about to run low on battery. But I want to keep going with this and talk a little bit more about. The only reason I referenced the military is that I just seen a video today about the war in Iraq, and I wanted to say that maybe what happens when people hurt, when people experience that, is that they realize that my right is your left, but so too am I you. So too am I hurting you to hurt you, or being hurt by you to get hurt by you, which is also hurting you, like that. But then also, children are the primary, women and children are primary victims of war on and off the battlefield. I extrapolate from that film because that film shows a very young man then very impressionable. I remember how impressionable I was then. We didn't have as much of the access to the internet and smartphones. A lot of us were very impressionable, malleable by you could easily be wrought by propaganda, even as we know better and not. And wherever background we come from, even me, like my father being educated, former freedom fighter in Africa, migrated to America, educated in America all the way to the PhD level, and published different things, and worked not tenure but adjunct as a professor, all that, and I could still easily be convinced by propaganda as anyone could, because propaganda manipulate. No one's better than manipulation. That too skillful and artistic propaganda. But it had been very, very young people getting maimed and injured in a lot of those videos. Both the injury of conscience, the people seeing what they're doing to people and what they're being trained to do, but then also some of the POWs, like we saw in that video that came out today. Heaven forbid, they made that man rest in peace as a warrior that had been fallen in that video that's shown. If anyone watches that, the coffee film, I think is the name of the channel, and they had an iteration that shows a little bit more of those atrocities from like Fallujah and the war in Iraq that we all knew about and knew was happening, but we didn't actually have the footage that blatant if we didn't go digging for it on the internet. But I got more content, and I'm going to try to come back with some more points to tie in with this. But I hope this could be teachable, and this is from me to you. Just love it. I hope everyone can amount to express yourself, which is healing and which is enjoying life and which is worthwhile for whatever it takes to get to the point of expressing yourself as you'd like to express yourself. One love.